Hey everyone, Darren Cornell here. Welcome back to my studio again. I hope you're all doing well. I have just, for the third time in a row, done a video and then realised I hadn't pressed record at the start of it. I don't know what I'm doing. I get to the end and I go to press stop and it's like, start recording. Like, no, I've just been talking for an hour. Okay, it's fine. I might have blown the microphone out there when I shouted. I don't know if that was a bit too loud. If it was, I apologise. Okay, hang on. Oh my goodness, I've got smudges all over my glasses. No, I'll just have to deal with that. Okay, let's go on with this. Hi, how are you doing? Better than me, I hope. I keep looking down at my screen because I'm checking that it is actually recording, because I don't know if it's either me forgetting to press record, which is entirely possible because I have done stuff like that before, or if it's a problem with the computer and I have been pressing record but it's just been unrecording, you know, it's been cancelling itself out and I don't realise. I'm not sure, so I will probably be looking down there quite a lot just to go, are you recording? And double checking. So welcome to part 3 of the Kylo Ren painting tutorial, the helmet off version of Kylo Ren, not the black and silver helmet, even though that is really interesting to paint. There's a lot of techniques going on just to get that black and silver looking right, but we're not doing that version. We're doing the one where he takes his helmet off and it's all, it's like an advert for shampoo or something. That's the version we're doing, which is good because that's interesting, because it's Adam Driver and he's got an interesting face. So where are we? Part 3. In parts 1 and 2 we did the base layer of the flesh colour, the underneath layer. We did some dry brushing. We did a leather brown, or what would have been leather brown on my old paints, wash over the top. I wasn't entirely happy with the colour of that as it was getting done, because like I said at the beginning of the series, this for me is a lot of experimentation while I figure out how to use these paints by themselves and replace these paints that I used to use. And even though I have bought a load of colours, still some of them I can't match. Now there is a shop apparently about 5 or 10 miles from here that has all of these ones. I can go and match them. I just haven't had the time. We've had family hospital visits and everything to do, so I'm just working from here. It doesn't matter, because even though I wasn't entirely happy with the colour of the brown wash that went on, that brown wash is actually one of the further back layers which get lots of things painted on top of it, so that's fine. I'll still get the same end result. It was just a point where I realised, ooh, that's not quite right. I don't know how to get that right shade that I want. Now, since we last spoke, turn that music down just a little bit. Since we last spoke, I did some experimenting with, I'm looking down here, I've got all my paints down here. I did some experimenting with my, I've got 6 different shades of brown. This is just to try and get one colour. I've got, and the funny thing is, this jar is actually brand new and full of leather brown paint. I could just use that, but I'm trying to do it without using those paints. I'm trying to do it just with Vallejo paints, because those are the ones that you guys can buy. So I did some experimenting with the 6 shades of brown that I've got and various reds and yellows. I thought, I want to find out how can I make that colour in a way that I can replicate. And you have a look at my palette, this is where I was doing it. See all those different the different shades of brown. One of those, very shiny, one of those is MP leather brown. One of those is the combination that I made actually quite simply by using mahogany brown and light brown mixed together in equal proportions, roughly, and that gave me a really quite close leather brown. So I'm keeping those two next to each other on the desk So, because for now, if I mix them up, I will forget what I did, because I didn't write it down. I just was messing around about, oh, that's it. So I'm keeping them together. Once I've done, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 different series, I will know exactly what to do because I'll remember it. But for now, it's like, oh, how did I get that leather brown again? So I've done that, and I also managed to get quite a good replacement for the chocolate brown that I used to use, this one. And I got that replacement by mixing flat brown and hull red. I think it was equal proportions. Honestly, I can't remember now. Next time I need it, I'll just drip them in until I get it right. It's slightly less chocolatey. It could be a bit warmer, maybe a bit more red, a bit more yellow, but considering I use chocolate brown as either a base layer for leather, which then has lots of things put on top of it, or a base layer for dark brown hair, which then has other things dry brushed on top of it and painted on top, it's actually good enough. It's not that important that it has to match perfectly. And as I think I said in the last video, I need to, and it will happen at some point, get off the obsession, you could say, get off the obsession of trying to match these so closely, and just get down to, okay, here's the face that I'm trying to paint, what will work? And I could end up doing it in ways that don't use these colours at all. These are just the ones that I had and used for the last 12 years. That's why it's sort of a bit of a, yeah, but I know that colour, I need to match that colour. I probably don't. I could probably get away with just doing it a completely different way. But until I'm comfortable with these new paints, it's probably easier to replicate my old colours and techniques, and then as I use the new paints, maybe I'll go, you know what, instead of mixing those 2 colours to get that one colour, maybe I can just use this 3rd colour and do it by scratch, and it'll be a slightly different shade underneath, but it will get the same result. And so it's a learning process, and it is, as I'm talking, I'm holding this, and my brain is going, okay, where am I going to put this? I've got no space on my desk. I'm trying to do that as I'm talking, and I'm completely losing track of what I'm doing. Just put it down there, Darren. Okay, it's done. It's down. It's gone. So I will get there with that process. But that's why this video series is... Did I empty that? No, I didn't. Now it's empty. You go up there, because if that is in front of me, I will constantly think it has coffee in it, and I will constantly be picking it up and go, so that's out my way. What was I just saying? I should never allow myself to go off on side tangents, because then I forget what my original point was. I know you're all shouting at me, you were saying this, Darren. I was talking about the colours, I was talking about... Oh, I got it, it's okay, thank you. Whoever shouted it out, thank you. Because it's such a process of experimenting, I just need the filing cabinet that's under the desk. I need to move that out of the way. Because it's such a process of experimenting and learning how to mix these colours together to get the thing that I want, and how to use them, because they thin down completely differently to the old paints, and they work different, and I need to go on some forums. I need to find some internet forums of people who use these paints, because some of the colours, they might mix like a brown colour, or just use a brown colour straight from one of the things, put it in, mix it with some water. If I leave it for like a minute while I'm painting something, go back to it, it's separated into like the brownish colour with a bit of orange something on top, and I have to remix it back up. And it's like, my other colours didn't do that. So I need to look into a lot of this stuff. But because it's all very new for me, and you know, because I'm experimenting so much to try and figure out what's the best way to do this, that's why this series is going up first on my Patreon, as all my series do, because they get to see everything I paint, or everything that I think is going to be interesting for them. But also with this one in particular, because it's the first time using these paints, I'm putting this one up on YouTube, but not for a month or so, just so the Patreon guys, they pay to watch my tutorials, they can get it to see it first, then everyone on YouTube will get to see it as well. Just this one where I'm going to be going, oh, I'm doing it all wrong. That's the one I choose to put up online, where I am completely floundering and not knowing what to do. That's the one I choose to let everybody watch. I must be crazy. Okay, let's get on with this. I will bring the overhead camera in, and we will get started. Now, I was using this camera to... Oh, I was showing a big statue and I moved the position. Excuse this creaking noise while I move this camera. It's on a ball joint and it's very noisy. Ah. Right, so that looks like it's pointing down. Let's change to the overhead camera with me in the corner. Okay, here's me in the corner. Here's me in the corner. Right, so this is roughly right. Now I can see straight away that that is zoomed out, which will have been because the previous thing was a large statue that I was trying to show more of with this camera. So if I zoom back in, there you go, there's my normal. If I'm holding a head there, I can paint around there. You guys can see it quite nice. Let me just, where is that? That would be better there. So if I just move this a little bit to the right, that's perfect. And if I want to hold it up close, I can do that. Yeah, that works. Now if I zoom out just for a second, where's my zoom setting gone? Okay, so here's my desk. If I just pull this board, as you can see, it's a separate board from my desk. For those who don't know, for those who are watching me paint for the first time, I have my desk. That's this colour here. This is my desk. This is actually a, if I can move the camera to the end, see the end there, that's my hand hitting it. So you can see it's a separate piece. It's actually a chopping board. I'm going to slide it forward so you can see it. It's a chopping board that I bought from IKEA. It's a big kitchen chopping board, and I use it on my desk because, one, it's perfect just to stop any mess going on my desk. Not that it matters, this is an old desk, I don't care what happens to it. There are scratches and paint marks and burn marks all over this desk. It's not really to protect it, but it's handy. But mainly, before I got this, before I started using this, I would have all these things, my paint, my brushes, my paint thinners, my palette and my kitchen roll. All of this would be on my desk and I'd be working. And if I needed to do something different, if I needed to put my keyboard in front of me and do some, you know, correspondence to reply to some commission emails, some client requests, or if I needed to pack up a box or do something different, I would have to sort of grab all of these things and move them off to one side, one by one. And it was very laborious. And then if I wanted to go back to painting, I'd have to bring them all back and make sure I had everything in the right place. Whereas with this, I'll just put my water on there for a second. With this board, when I'm done painting, I just go, slide everything out the way, and I've got my desk back. So it's a really good way of doing it. And it was a chopping board, and I think it cost like £10 or something, and it was the best thing I ever did because it just made it so much easier. So I'm going to put my water to one side and the palette, I'm going to put the palette there just so you guys can see when I'm mixing colours, but I will try and remember to lift it up to show you. Because if I'm painting here, I'm holding a head. For most things that's fine, it's actually better so I'm not having to hold it up if it's zoomed in a bit. We'll zoom in a little bit and I'll try and remember to show you things that I'm using. So we've got that, we've got some brushes. These are I explained in the last video, I think it might have been one on a different series. I'm recording a few at the moment. The brushes that I'm sort of using at the moment pretty much stay here just because it's nice and convenient, although these do change. Sometimes I'll realize I'm not really using that brush and it'll go back on my big brush stand which holds 20, 30 brushes or something, and this is sort of like a rotating collection of brushes that I'm using at the moment. We've got the flow enhancer here, which will go next to the water. So if I'm going for the water or the flow enhancer, I will be reaching over here, so forgive me when I do that. I would put it on the other side, but that's where my keyboard and my trackpad for the computer are. So I'm pulling my sleeves up so I don't want to take my hoodie off, but I don't want to get paint on my sleeves. So sleeves are up, everything is ready. Okay, let's finally get down to it. So this is Kylo Ren. Now you can see, and I can see looking at it, that when I did the brown wash, which I did, honestly I can't remember how I did it. I mixed a few colours together trying to get that leather brown and wasn't happy with anything. It sort of looks like his face looks quite dirty. That's not how it normally looks. That's not the ideal colour that I would have had at this stage. It's not going to make any difference because all of this, like this, will be used as the base of the underneath colour, and this will have other things put on top, dry brushes and washes and little details. So this is not going to impact the end result. But at this stage, it's not the perfect colour that I would have had normally if I had been using my old paints. But it's fine, I can work with it, and at least now that I think I know how to make leather brown, you watch, next time I try and do it, it won't work, but I think I know how to do it. So next time I paint a head, hopefully that stage will go a lot easier. So I'm just going to figure out what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to do some more dry brushing on top of that, and I want to bring back a little bit of the pink, even though if I compare this, I haven't got one handy, to a Hot Toys head, this will still look very, very pink compared to a Hot Toys head, because they are very, very, very brown. They've got a weird greyish brown to them. They're way too brown for white people that they're supposed to be. So this is actually more pink still than they are, but it's not the shade that I want for Kylo Ren, for Adam Driver. Now I'm just pulling my folder over there so I can have a look at one of the pictures that I have on my screen, so I can sort of see what colour I want to aim for. And this will work as a base, but I just want to figure out now what colour do I want to dry brush on top. So this was the original base layer. I think if I mix together, let's see, I'm gonna go for, see, this process of learning, I might do things at this stage in a way more complicated way than I actually need to, and I might end up mixing a bunch of colours together when I figure out, 10 commissions down the line, wow, I could have just done that with 2 colours and 2 drops and it would have been done. And now I'm going, well, I'll use this colour and maybe this colour and some of that, because I don't know these colours. They are different and I'm finding my way in the dark. But I think I'm going to mix these 3 together. Beige red, which was the base underneath the first layer. I'm going to mix that with a little bit of salmon rose, which is a sort of pinky skin colour, and then light flesh, which is, it's a bit different. It's slightly more pink than the pale flesh that I used to use, which is actually a little bit closer to ivory. In fact, I might, do I mix some ivory in? No, I don't do that yet. I'll see how these go. So I'm going to mix those three: light flesh, beige red, and what was it called? Salmon rose. I'm going to mix some of them together and see how that goes for some dry brushing. Just give them a shake. Now I've got one of the things that I was told to do with these little bottles is, because of my old paints, they were like that, and I would just take the lid off, and if I needed to mix them up, I could shake them up because they were quite they're big jars compared to how tall and thin these are, but I would also just be able to stick a thing in and mix them up. Can't do that with these. So what I was told, what it was suggested to me, was you can buy bags of ball bearings that don't rust. I've got them down there somewhere, and I will pull them out on another video. And you put one in each bottle, so when you go to shake it, can't hear it on that one. Where is it? Here you go, hear that metal? So as you shake it, the metal ball is going, and that's mixing the paint up, which is actually a really useful thing. Now, what I've found, some of these paints are, some of them are much thinner. These ones were a pretty consistent consistency. They were all the same thickness. So I'd open them up and they would all, is this open? Oh, there is open. There you go. Ah. They were all about the same level of gloopiness, to put it in simple terms. So I knew that no matter what colour I was using, I already knew in my head how much water or thinner I wanted to add to it. What I find with these, and I don't know if it's because they come from different sellers or if it's how Vallejo paints are anyway, or if I've just got different batches and I'm getting sort of, you know, slightly faulty or old batches, I've no idea. Some of them quite thick and gloopy and they don't really shake up very well. Some of them are quite thin and watery in comparison. I mean, they're not water, but they're thinner in comparison, and you give them a shake and you can hear the ball rattling around straight away. So they are very different, all of those, very different consistencies, and it's a thing that I'm getting used to still. Let me, where's that? So that's about straight. Yep, that's straight. So that is one of the many things that I'm getting used to. Okay, don't want that one first. Not that it matters, because they're all getting mixed up. Whoa, that's the thing I've realised. Every time I shake it up, even though there's no gas or anything in there, as soon as I take the lid off, a bunch of it squirts out. So I'm just dropping some in to here. Now, one of the things that I'm struggling with at the moment, or I'm, you know, still getting used to, is, so you can hear that one's much more liquid, and I can feel it, you know, shaking around inside. I'm trying to pay attention to how much I'm dropping down, because I sort of don't know what I'm doing yet. When I used to use the other paints, and oops, that was way too much, but I think it'll be alright. I put roughly equal amounts in there of the, whatever the three colours were. Light flesh, beige red, salmon rose. While I mix it up, I just want to say what I am getting used to is putting amounts of paint in my palette, because when I use the old ones and I would get a brush like that and just sort of go scoop and just grab some out of the little bottles and then splodge it in there, it was a very physical, tactile way of getting the paint, and I sort of knew how much I was grabbing straight away. And I just have all the lids open, I'd go grab, 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 and I'd have a bunch of paint that I needed to go. With dropping this down, the act of dropping it out of what feels like a smaller container, even though I don't think it is actually physically any smaller, but it feels like a smaller container, and dropping it out it feels like I'm emptying the entire thing out. So I find that I use much less of it because it feels like I'm using far too much. And then I end up mixing the colour and realise, oh, I actually need way more than that. So I'm getting used to not only how to make the colours, but also how much to put out. Now, that is actually not a bad colour. That's pretty close to what I was after. I'm going to put a little bit more... How am I going to do this? I'm going to put a tiny bit more. Let's see. Let's put some salmon in there. Could have been either one of the colours. I mean, to be honest, I could have put some brown in there. I could have put some red in there. I just wanted to warm it up a little bit more than I had. Now, if I was painting with this, like painting, you know, just splashing it on like a normal layer, I would throw some thinner or something in that, but not necessarily too much because it's actually quite good. But that's not what I'm doing with this. I am doing some dry brushing with this, so I'm going to grab a fairly old messy brush, or one that's been used a lot and has sort of, see how curly it is, it looks like a palm tree or something. That used to be like this. If I turn these around, that's sideways. I mean, even this one's starting to go a little bit, but eventually they go like that, and once they go like that, then they just become messy brushes. And once they become messy brushes, I use them for things like this. I'm going to slide this over here. I've got to make sure I don't lean on that, which is very easy to do. Oh, excuse me. There was a sort of hiccup burp thing there. So I've just taken some of that colour onto the brush. I'm getting rid of most of it. And I find it's actually quite a good way of testing it by putting it on me, because I am skin colour. But it lets me know that there's not too much paint coming off the brush. Now, for now, I'm going to do this at a distance. Normally I will pull my glasses down and look at it much closer. But for now, I'll do it a little bit further away, so you can actually see it better without that, because that's a lot of brown behind it. But that's the colour I'm using, okay? Let me put that to one side. Oh, itchy nose. Do I want that white there? That's actually fine like it is. I've probably let that brush dry now. I'll end up having to get some more on the brush. Because it's most of it is off the brush. I mean, you can already see it going on, but I'm doing this very gently. There's also not much paint on there, so I'm not filling in all the gaps. I'm trying to do this quite slowly. But you can see already the difference between the two halves. And what we're doing, we are using that colour underneath, even though it wasn't the perfect shade that I was aiming for. It's still a good enough shade that I can work with it. And you can see where I've put it. I've gone across there, down there, and you can see the difference between that bit and that bit. And as I do this, it misses out all of the deep bits, so like the crevices in there, the crevices in the corners, bits around the nose. The brush simply doesn't get into those bits, so they stay the original colour, or at least they don't pick up as much paint, so they stay closer to the original colour. And also, by doing this, I'm able to choose where do I want to lay down more of this paint. Now, as I'm doing this more, we're obviously using up most of the paint that's on the end of the brush, so less is coming off, and I will end up having to grab a little bit more paint in a bit. So I'm using both my own judgment as to how I think something needs to look, but also looking at the reference picture, I've essentially got a photo of Kylo Ren up on my screen to judge, okay, how does he look? How do I think I need to do, you know, what do I need to do to match that? Also thinking things like, let's get a little bit more of that, and then wipe more of that off. A little bit more. So I'm not only looking at the colour of his skin, the colour of his face, I'm thinking about things like, where does light come from? So light normally comes from above, and it'll come down and hit these bits and hit these bits and hit these bits and these bits, and a lot of it will stay more in shade than other bits. Now, you don't necessarily need to paint like that, and this is a personal judgment. Some people will paint the faces aiming purely for how they physically look. If you were to shine a light straight at them, how would they look? And that's what they aim for. And that's sort of what I do, but I also aim a little bit to add in some of the surroundings of where the person is. So the light source, how people's faces look when light hits their skin, where are the shadows, where are the reflections, and I paint some of those on in a subtle way. I don't overdo it. If you look at some of the miniatures that people paint, when they paint figures that are this tall, like complete figures, head to toe, they are this tall. They're mind-blowing. I don't know how they do it. One day I will try it because I'm fascinated by it and I think I want to give it a go. I don't know if I can do it. But when they paint that, those guys really exaggerate the shadow and the light sources and the different colour reflections and things like that. So one half of a face will be really, really dark and the other half will be really, really light. When you look at it, it just looks like a face that's having light hitting on it from one side. It's brilliant. They really do incredible. But we don't want to exaggerate it that much on this, because these figures, when they're standing there and you've got the full body and the arms and everything, that would look a little bit weird. But I like to introduce a little bit of that. Just, it helps, because not everyone's light on their shelves replicate how the sun works on a full-size head out in the open. So it helps to do a little bit of that. Now, that is helping, because I'm trying to imagine, okay, this looks a certain way now. How is this going to look when I have added shading under the eyes and some blush on the cheeks and on the chin and the lip colour and all of those things? I'm trying to take it mentally into the future and imagine what it's going to look like. Now, it still looks quite grey here, even though the colour I'm using is anything but grey. You can see the skin colour there. Because I'm painting it quite thin, I'm just wondering if it's picking up a different colour off the brush as well. But it looks quite grey. Let me have a look at this close up for a second. Give me 1 second. No, it's just a mix of the two. That's fine. I will introduce reds and it will warm it up. So that bottom brown colour worked just fine, and we're going to pick up more of the highlights, more of the shadows as we go through. But for now, that worked out quite well. What I think I might do is do a little bit more of that salmon rose and do another layer. I think I might want to warm that up a little bit more. So I'm going to take some of this. I'm going to, let's see if I can just rinse this brush very quickly, just to try and get because we're using quite dry paint and then we're brushing off most of it, the paint actually dries really quickly on the brush. I don't want that. What I find happens, and I've never been sure if it's from the paint or from the brush, but I know it's happened on usually older heads that I've done, but it might be that when brushes get to a certain age and look like that, even if they're clean, because they're so old, they're not clean, and sometimes when I've done things like what I've just been doing, things have like a bluish tint to them, almost as if it's dirty. And I'm just wondering if, as I've been doing this for the last 12 years, when it gets to that stage, do some of my brushes drop off, like, you know, I mean, it's super subtle, but it's enough for me to notice it while I'm painting. You know, is there actually colour coming off the bristles? I don't know. What I need to use more regularly probably is this stuff, a brush cleaner, which is essentially soap in a container, and you can see I've used it a bit there, and you put water on your brush, you put it in there, you rub it around, and it gets a little bit soapy and it cleans your brushes, but it does it really well. And it was one of those things that I had never considered using before. I didn't even know it existed, and it was brought to my attention. I'm not going to say the person's name because I can't remember if I'm remembering the right person, because a few people have helped me out with things like this, and I don't want to say the person's name in case I get the wrong name, so I'll look it up and then say who did it. But I know two people in my head who, someone's helped me with that, someone's helped me with some other stuff. I'm thinking of two people, so if you're the person who got me that soap, I'm thinking of you. And they brought it to my attention, and I was like, whoa, that's a thing that exists, because I'd always just been using water. I'd just been, you know, doing it as I'm doing it now. Now the problem is I've just mixed a bit of water in with that, and I didn't really want that. So what I was going to do was initially mix in some of that, what's it called? Salmon rose. It will take me a long time to learn these names. I was going to mix some of that in with the original colour, but now I'm thinking I might just put a little bit on top. I'm going to do this very lightly here because I don't want to do it heavy, but I just want to see how it... That's actually quite good. Now it probably looks weird on the camera. The problem is the light is immediately behind the camera, so the light source is coming. So where's the camera? There's the camera lens. The light source is essentially coming from there straight down, so there are no shadows. It's like when you take a photo of someone's face with a flash and it always looks completely weird and different to how people look out in the street. It's the same effect. The light really needs to be more over that way, and at some point that's what I'll end up doing. I'll fix it so I can move this light further back but have the camera coming out on something that I'll build. But for now I will just make do with the camera where it is, and I will just explain what I'm doing and how things look to me. So I've just taken a tiny amount of that salmon rose colour, and I'm just putting it on the brush, and I'm dry brushing it on exactly the same as I did with the previous colour, but I don't want to go over the top with it. I'm just doing a thin covering because it's added a little bit of water to it. It's not quite so dry brushing, it's sort of filling in a little bit more of the shading bits, but it's a bit warmer than the previous stuff, which is quite good. See, that just looks so cold and flat and weird on the camera, but I can, as I tilt it and look at it like that, which you can't see unfortunately. How can I? No, I can't even do that, because if I move the camera further forward it moves the light source as well. That's so frustrating. What happens if I turn the light off? probably not enough light at all for you. So I'm just going forward and back, adding bits of this salmon colour. What I may do actually is get a different brush. Let's go a smaller brush. So I get a brush like that. I'm going to get some of that salmon. I'm actually going to thin it down with some water, and instead of just dry brushing it on, I'm actually going to paint some thin washes here and there. Sorry, I do this on camera. There you go, that helps. Just to thin it down, but to fill in, because when I'm dry brushing, there's quite heavy skin texture on the sculpt, and so the dry brushing is making it quite bumpy looking, more than I want. You want some texture, but it's actually more than I want it to look. So by taking a small amount of that paint and mixing it in with water and making it like really watered down, really super thin, it's letting me go in and lay down this essentially slightly coloured water, but because it is thinned down, it fills in all the little crevices and the bits of the skin more than dry brushing does. So it lets you, it's almost like airbrushing, it lets you get an overall colouring. More than the dry brushing does. Just get a little bit more water. Thin that down again. Ba, 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 ba. You see, I can see from the dry brushing, let me zoom this in. Where are we? Camera 1, zoom. So from the dry brushing, you can see how that bit between the nose has stayed dark, because as I brushed over the top, the bristles simply didn't go in there. So it's got paint on those bits, but nothing in the middle. And I actually don't want that to be such a separate shade, so I'm taking this watered down version and just painting inside there, and it's thin and it's going to take a few layers because it is very watered down, but at least I can get some in there. Ooh, itchy nose. The downside of having a big moustache. So I can dab this here and there. Now we're at the stage now, we've sort of stumbled onto it, where a lot of the work that's being done is just very slow forward and back with colours and shades and stuff, as opposed to specific methods where you go, oh, you get this colour and you do this thing and then all of a sudden you've got it looking right. It's never that simple for a start, but it's it's at the stage now where you'll get a little bit of light and you'll put a bit on, and you'll get a bit of red and you'll put a bit on, and you'll get a bit of brown and you'll put a bit on. And it's just all about finding the bits, and because you start off, and look, I've been doing this 12 years, I still get this. You start off and you're painting a thing and you go, oh my god, that looks nothing like it. Oh my god, that colour that I'm putting on, it doesn't make any difference. It's not, why is that not making it look like Adam Driver? And I've been doing this a long time, I still get that. But what you have to tell yourself and remember and allow yourself to remember is that as you do this one little thing that you know that you're doing now, in this case I'm doing these thin washes and I'm just picking out bits of his face that either need to be a little bit lighter or a bit more pink or should have more highlights, or you know, the colour of the skin just needs to, I'm just going round adding, I mean it's really subtle, it's watered down so much, and I'm making sure that the edges of the bits that I'm painting are, you know, nicely blended in, but I'm just slowly adding shades and colours, and yes, it's very subtle. But you do this and then you add a bit of brown and then you add a bit of red and then you add a bit of purple, and over time, by layering it up, before you know it, you've got a face that looks like who you're trying to look like. You always want it to be done quicker than it actually does. But it gets there. It always gets there. Sorry, wasn't paying attention to whether that was on camera or not there. Very good, we are getting there. Now what I'm going to do, just to start off the next bit of the process, even though I don't really need to, and this has been 48 minutes, although at least what 15 minutes of that at the start was me just talking. I'm just going to do a little bit of red of the next, what I would normally do as the next stage. Now this skin coloured stage is actually still ongoing, but before I finish this video, just so I can show you what comes next, even though I've still got more work of that stage that I'm doing to work on, just so you at least see a little bit more than just those couple of things that I've done in this video. If I clean those brushes, get the water off them, Now, what colour would I normally use? I would normally use maybe some deep red, which sort of looks like that, and I have these two colours. I think okay, let me try. So I've got two shades of red and they're a little bit different. They actually look way more different on camera there. One's darker, but that's not necessarily, doesn't mean it's darker in colour tone. When I think of a red being more dark, it's a little bit more purple. That's how I think of it in terms of what I need for paint. Now, even though this is a darker red than that one, that could just be how the paint goes down, but I do want it to be a bit purple, so I'm probably going to get some grey blue and add that to this. And it could be, and I will at some stage of the paint, that I could use either of these with this and it will provide something that I need. But I'm just trying to think, well, what do I want to use right now at this stage? And I think I'm going to get just a little bit of this flat red, put a drop in there. Whoa, there's loads coming out. It's like it's pressurized. Stop coming out. Stop it. Okay, there you go. That was way more than I needed. See, you can hear that one. That's way more liquidy. For some reason, that blue-grey, much thinner than that beige red. And I don't know if that's normal or just the ones that I've got. Okay, so let's get some of this grey blue. Just put a little bit in there. I actually don't know how much I need. There. Stop coming out. They won't stop. Okay, I'll use the same brush. I'll use this one because it's not a perfect point. I don't need it to be. It can be quite soft on the end, although I don't really want to mix that with a, you know what I can do, I can just clean it off. Let me get use some flow enhancer for this, because I want this purple, I want this red to be quite purpley. That's actually not bad to start with. You can see the red colour at the top there, that's the red, and we added some of that colour there, and we've got that colour, which is sort of a bit purple. And that's sort of what we need. It's going to be more red over time eventually, but just for now, to start with I'm just throwing in a load of water because it's actually way thicker than I need it to be. To start with the shading that I'm doing, it will do. And I also want it to be more brown, like more suntanned, and I want it to be more red, more blood vessel-y. But for now, that will happen with different layers. For now, this will do. So I'm getting some of that. Oh, it's very, even with that, even though I've put a load of water in there, it's still quite thick. I want it to be very thin and watery. Too much. How much water is it going to take? Let's put some over here. We'll get a little bit of the purple and chuck a load of water on there. Chuck some flow enhancer just to smooth out and get a little bit. And I want this to be very, very thin. See, this is where it's going to be experimenting in comparison to my old paint, because they will go down a different thickness than the new ones. Sometimes they will be a bit more like a thin glaze, and different ones will go on and there'll be quite thick paint that's going down, and that is what I'm having to get used to, because it's all very different. So I'm just taking this reddish colour and just adding a bit here and there. Now put some on the lips, even though it's not the final colour, but sometimes it helps. You just have a little bit of red on the lips and let you see what you're aiming towards. Now I'm going to take this purplish colour, and it's very thin, it's very light, and it's not the final colour by any means, but it does help to build it up. And I'm going to take some of that and go, let's see, blob 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 around his cheeks, and just randomly dab it off with my fingertip, because it doesn't, I'm not looking for a perfect airbrush smooth thing here. I'm just looking for a bit of colour, but a bit of randomly positioned and random sort of thickness colour. More like skin. Skin isn't perfectly airbrushed. Sorry, I didn't even look if I was doing that on camera there. I apologise if I wasn't. Now there's hardly anything on the brush at this stage. It's just a bit of water with a tiny bit of that red colour in. But it's enough. I'm going to put a little bit up here in the gap between the hair and the skin. And when I do that, it helps. That is where some people will airbrush a thin little misty line of the hair colour to help blend the skin into the hair colour. And because I don't do an airbrush, I use, gotta remember when I need to hold this thing, I do it with a brush, but I don't do it with the dark brown hair colour. I do it more with the red shade that I use for the shadings, you know, here and there. And I don't know, I just always prefer that. So as with before, when I was doing the lighter colours, as I'm doing this, I'm just imagining, okay, where would there be some shadow maybe? Where would there be some, you know, more red blood vessels under the skin? Where is the skin just a slightly different shade than the rest of it on a normal human face? And you'll notice that I'm basically going round the entire face. I'm not doing, God, that looks like he's got a white mask on. That is so different than how it looks in person to me. I can see the layers building up to a completely normal human skin colour, but on here it looks like he's got white makeup on. I hope it comes across a bit better to you than what I'm seeing on my preview. Maybe my preview is a little bit more harsh than it needs to be. I can see it anyway, and you will see it by the end, I promise. Oh, what was I saying? I've done it again. I was talking about a thing and I distracted myself by talking about a different thing. So you are imagining what's under the skin, where are the different blood vessels, where are the shadows from the light source that's overhead. Look at people's faces. Maybe not in person, don't walk around staring at people in the face because you might get arrested, but look at people's faces, look at photographs, look at videos, and you will notice, you will realize that skin is not just skin color. There's no such thing. Skin color is about 50 different colors all mixed in different quantities and different places. It's a whole load of different things, different techniques to make it look like it. There's no such thing as a skin color. So when you look at those things, you realize that sometimes people's skin sort of looks a bit blue or a bit grey. People's skin sort of looks sometimes a bit purple or a bit brown or a bit cream colour or a bit red. And all of these things added up, mixed in the right quantities, in the right positions, in the right places, make a face. And that's what all of this is, what we're doing. I've moved it again. Maybe I need to, if I bring the camera a little bit back this way, then as my as I pull this towards myself to see, you'll be able to still look at it. See, the problem is, by doing that, you're not seeing the rest of my desk, but maybe it helps a little bit. See, on these bits, I'm just doing the curl there of the round bit of the nose, because those are often quite red in colour because of the blood vessels and stuff, but also it helps look with the, you know, separate it with shadow. The front of a nose is quite often a little bit red, as is the bridge, but it also is lighter, so you have to be, it's a balancing act between making it have some colour on it but also making it paler at the same time. In there we're going to add some browns and stuff in there eventually, but we're just adding some shadow in there. There's red blood vessels under the eye, so we put some of that in there and around, and that turns into shadow which goes off to the side. Same thing there, get some of that turns off to shadow off over to the side. Let's get some of the colour and just throw a little bit more. Now that's dried out a little bit. Get some of that purple. That's a bit too thick, but let me throw a bit of water in there. Actually, I don't want this to be too purple because this is, oops, this is going to be a different colour. This is going to have like a brown wash over it, but I just want to get some colour on there. It's actually way too thick that I've just done there. Let me wipe some off with my finger. Let's get most of the paint off that brush. Just thin that down there. There you go, that's good. Need to put the camera in a position and just stick it there and go, right, that's the camera position. It's not moving. Now, just with those bits, even though it's not the final colours, you're starting to see the shadow around the eye and under the eyelashes, the eyebrows, the shading under his eyes, the red blush on the end of his nose, the bits around the cheeks, it's all starting to add up and take you towards being a realistic human face. Now, it's not just a case of finding a skin colour and painting it on. That's never, you will never get a realistic face like that. I know some people, I'm just going to put that down for 1 second while I clean this brush. I know some people, in fact, you know what, let me flick back over to that and get this out of the way. I know some people when they do faces, and this is quite close to how companies do them when they are painting, you know, 3,000 heads or something. They do it in such a way that they start off with a particular colour. It's usually the colour of the plastic. I'm sure I just got paint on myself. I can feel paint, but I don't know where it is. Sometimes they'll start off with a particular colour, which might be the colour of the plastic, or the colour of the resin, or a particular colour that they use that they just airbrush over the whole thing, which is quite an accurate colour. How can I say this? It's the colour that requires the least amount of painting to make it look like it might be human skin. And that's great if you are trying to do something quickly. I, as the people who come to me for commissions know, I never try to do things quickly. I could probably do things quicker, but I don't do things quickly. It's always, for me, about making it look the best. And for me, that is not about trying to find one colour that will go on a face and go, you know what, that's 80% there. All I've got to do is a couple of psh, psh, psh with an airbrush and it's done. I don't want that. I want to go in at this stage with a little pointy brush and put on little thin washes and build that up through layers of light and light flesh and dark flesh and red and purple and blue and brown, and add all of these things and bring it out to being a complex, realistic looking skin that makes a human face that looks more alive than a head that you might get from somewhere else. So that's why I do things the way I do. Now, this video series is actually looking even more complicated than the way I normally do stuff, because I'm fighting these colours that I don't know, that I'm thinking I know what sort of colour I want, but these colours that I have, because you know, you can buy these, there's about 300 different shades of those. I don't want to buy all of them. I could do. I could buy all of them, and then I would just look through all of them and go, that's the red that I want. I don't want to do that. I want to be able to do it with just a few, because I did all of my work for the last 12 years with about 12 colours. There was a couple of extra colours if I needed silver, or you know, that I didn't really use that much, but for most of my head paintings that you will have seen, they were all done with about 10 or 12 colours. And that's what I'm trying to get here. Now, this is the first time I've used these paints, so for me, I'm doing this and going, I think that might be right. If I mix it with that one and that one, that might be close. And then I'm also realizing, oh well, those ones are much thicker than the paints I use. I need to add more water. It's all very experimental, so it's looking more complicated than it normally would be, just because I'm figuring stuff out as we go along. But it's still representative of how I do things, which is sort of starting from a rough base layer and building it up, because human skin, look at photographs, seriously, look at people's faces, you will see how it looks like that's just skin colour, all of that stuff. It's not. Look at photos, it's really not. So that's why we do it, and that's why things like even things like that Doctor Who head over there, I don't think I've got an example, a picture. That's why when you look at them up close, they look quite realistic, just because I've put all of that stuff into it. And that's what I'm doing on these videos to help you guys do. And fingers crossed, this will work, because I'm different paints, totally. It changes everything. But even I'm looking at Kylo here. Now you can't really see because there's a bright light right there, and the closer you get, you see how much bleached out he is. But back here, not so much. I'm looking at it, and it's slightly different than it normally is at this stage, because I'm figuring out the colours, but I can see a completely realistic Adam Driver coming out of that. I can see where it's up to. I can see what's going to happen, which is great. So I'm going to put this. This is my new super high-tech system of making sure I don't have bits of dust and bits of microscopic hair and dust and stuff floating around sticking to my head. Plastic cup on top of the head, like that, and that just sits there on my desk and keeps all my heads ready for next time. So that's an hour and 10 minutes. That was way longer than I wanted it to be. I apologize for that. This video, normally they are between half an hour and an hour normally. This series is a little bit different because I'm figuring stuff out, so you can watch this especially if you're on YouTube watching this and you don't know my tutorials normally, you can watch this to see how I do things and to see how you might be able to do things, and also just to watch a flat plastic head turn into a realistic looking person. But you can take it as a rough example of how things normally are, but they're normally a bit better. That's the best way I'm going to say it. But it is going to get the same result, which is good. So I am going to go. I'm also very thirsty, and I'm glad I put that over there because I was about to reach for coffee again. I told you I needed to put that over there. I'm going to go and get a coffee and then do some more painting. Thanks for sticking with me through that longer video than I thought it was going to be. But I'm glad I did that bit of red, purple at the end, because it just started to bring out all the shades and the shadows and stuff that we're going to be adding in. And it was good to see it, and for me to look at it and go, yeah, that's going to work. That's what I needed. I wanted to show you what comes next, even though there's still more to do, but I also wanted to see for myself, yeah, you know what, those base layers are actually going to work. It's going to be fine. Sometimes I just need to know that. It's going to be fine, Darren. Right, take care everyone. Have a good evening, have a good day, night, weekday, weekend, wherever you are watching this. I will see you next time. We'll come back on part, what was this, 3? We'll come back on part 4 and we'll do, I don't know what we'll do. We'll do something else. We'll randomly pick a thing and we'll do it. We might do more of what we were doing there, where we were just having some colours and randomly going over all of the head and going, oh, let's do a bit there, oh, let's do a bit there, and just, because that's quite often when the best stuff happens, and it's certainly the most satisfying because you're sort of doing bits of everything all over, and it just comes out and ends up being more realistic at the end of it. It's brilliant. So we'll do some of that. I'm looking down on my screen here just to get my cursor in the right place. I really need a set of those buttons that you can just program to have things. I just go click like a TV studio, and I just push a button and the thing happens. At the moment it's like, I'm going, where's my cursor? Oh, I've got to get that in the right place. Okay. See you soon, guys. See you on the next part. Take care. Bye.